Hey, it's Chris. You see the latest controversy all over Twitter? Did you see my little short from earlier in the week? If you didn't, spoilers, go check it out. But yeah, right? Like, board game Twitter is always up for a good controversy. People over there just love to yeah, 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 yeah. And if you missed it, Chip Theory Games sent out like real, like expensive, like actual swords, right? Through the mail to a bunch of content media people, right? Like real swords. These were forged for this purpose, right? And they said they sent them out like on Twitter to like 30 people, which is, and this is the really most interesting part, right? They sent them out to, quote, people that really have supported them over the years, or that they've felt really have, they've, really enjoyed their products. Content producers who have been in their latest review cycle for like Burn Cycle, or who are going to be covering the upcoming like Hoplomachus, whatever their solo one is that come out. And then, but they also clarified too, they also sent them to content media people who have been very vocal about their dislike for Chip Theory Games as well, right? Which one of those is not like the other, right? And so people are sniping each other on Twitter. These passive aggressive statements are going left and right, like, you're being bought. No, nothing like this could buy me because it's stuff all over the place. Me, I'm just sitting there with my gif of Michael Jackson eating popcorn, right? Like, just all sorts of stuff. And no, like, I didn't get one. Like, Chip Theory Games doesn't know who I am. So why... It's just this stuff is so all over the place, right? The comparisons are being thrown out there, like, what would it take to be bought? Is it a car? Is it, a swag package? Is it, whatever? It's just this crazy conversations that go on there. And so, I'm just a fly on the wall sometimes in these situations on the board game hobby scene. And sometimes it's just nice to just sit back and be like, man, y'all on both sides are ridiculous, right? Because you got to be on one side or the other nowadays. Anyway, crowdfunding roundup, right? What do we got going on this week? We had a couple things that are already doing really well. So, as always, me, I just love talking about board game stuff, right? Gosh. I got nothing else. I just thinking about it just cracks me up. So, there you go. Let's talk games, folks. Let's get into it. Boom. There we go. First up, we're going to talk about Kinfire Chronicles, Night's Fall here. We have $90,000 already in the first 24 hours, and this is really impressive. This was one where I said, I don't really know what this is going to do. This one could easily go one way or the other, fall flat, or, be at almost 200% funded very quickly. Now, this is the interesting dynamic and the interesting question of this one in this standee-based 2 to 4 player cooperative RPG adventure system, 1 to 4 player, apparently, excuse me. It's a learning as you go sort of setup. The inside cover of the main board, as you can see here, is actually utilized as a playing area. 20 hours of gameplay, 45 to 60 minute sessions. This is where it gets a little bit tricky because they say, it's a simple how to play, select your quest, choose your adventure. You've got a whole bunch of narrative story cards and skill check abilities that you're going to be doing, battling enemies on a map, and then exploring the town based on the locations that are available to you with a certain number of limited actions in the first place. The rulebook is online here when we go down a little bit further, and it's divided into 4 rulebooks, which are each about like 10 to 16 pages each running through a specific part of that dynamic that I just explained. The biggest part that you need to know is this is a deck building game where you are limited, but also demanded to have a certain number of cards, 18 in this specific situation, in your deck at all times. It is also going to be color specific, where you have to have certain combinations of colors depending on your hero, which is known as your seeker. And the other dynamic, interesting issue that you're going to run into in this is you have on sort of the combat and this side of things, at least, we'll stick with this and we'll go back up to the choose your own adventure in a second. Combat is determined by chit pulls from a bag, either enemy abilities or a certain number of chit tokens that represent your character, depending on how many players you're playing with. So for example, you have 2 characters that you're playing with, you and someone else, then you put like 6 of your chits in there. But if you're playing with 4 people, you only put 4 of them in there. So that dynamic will go in there. There's a certain number of enemy chits as well that you're going to be pulling from. Now, the dynamic that they give you with the ability to mitigate here is you have what are known as like fate or destiny chits that you can play if you have them, and it allows you, instead of just pulling and choosing the chit that you have, it allows you to pull 4 of them at a time and choose the one that you want in order to go next when things, you know, get a little bit crunchy. Now, the upper portion here, the choose your own adventure, is more of the open narrative. You know, this happens, do you go left or do you go right? If you go to left, 0-2. If you go right, go to 0-3 and see what happens. You know, you're going to be getting memories. And if you have this specific memory, you remember who ate this and this was this person, so go to memory this. Or if you don't remember this because you don't have this card already, go to, you know, this one instead. So that's going to be one element of the card play. There's going to be skill checks, though, that are going to be going along with this, that are literally going to be flipping over the top cards of your deck, trying to go for certain colors in order to achieve the skill check. And you're going to have potentially multiple people doing that in order to get a number of successes that are needed. Broken down enough? How do you feel about those elements? Because that's the combat. The combat is almost Gloomhaven-esque, where you've got cards with tops and bottoms that are going to give you actions depending on which side of the card you want to do, but also ability to boost other people. You're going to have the ability to just go through your deck and play, and you only do the reset of your deck at certain times because, you know, if you're doing, say, the skill checks, you may have already gone through your deck and you don't necessarily reset it. The other aspect is after said battle that you do here, you reset your health, you reset your deck, you reset a lot of the things, and so there's not as much carryover in this portion as you may want as well. You know, like if you don't have a whole lot of consequences or as much consequences as other games, how big of a turn on or turn off is that going to be? Now you can check out down here, you can see the demos that's on Tabletopia. You get a little bit of the background of what the characters are and what their motives are in that sense as well. The reward tier here, it's going to get you $99, which is more than I was expecting, but they flat out say right here, and take this for what you will, Pledge Manager prices are going to go up, and potentially even up to, not probably $50, but I could easily see it being 10, 20 or more ish, 25-ish by the time the Campaign Manager opens. So box, 6 characters, acrylic standees, maps, quests, towns, boosters that, like I said, you're going to be customizing your deck of, where there are seeker-specific, hero-specific cards that can only go in your deck, as well as just cross-compatible cards that are going to be able to done in anyone. So take it for what you will. Here is the premium collection. This gets you the upgrade kit, which is, I'm assuming, better chits and just deluxeifications here. If we look at enemy standees, that's cool. Neoprene mats, metal coins, and audio narration, and whatever else they unlock. I'm assuming they'll have a few other upgrades, or you can buy all of this stuff individually. They have the stretch goals right here as we scroll down a little further, upgraded to the Destiny chits, the plastic tokens, and a new side quest. So a little bit of gameplay and not a little bit of non-gameplay, but they're definitely spacing that out. And was that expected to be funding this quickly? Is that going to be too big of a gap to, you know, consecutively start unlocking a lot of things in the first couple days? Who knows? Who cares? But you have to like this concept that I just mentioned of the session-based scenarios, RPG-esque upgradable deck building with chit drawing, bag building, if you will. So if you do, great. This seems like something that is really not like a lot of the stuff out there, but the combat, the drawing system, the skill check system may not be appealing to you. The price point's about what I expected, maybe slightly more in that sense for the basic upgrade, but take that for what you will. That's Kinfire Chronicles Nightfall. Next up is Almost Innocent from Colossal Games, and it gives me a little bit of Search for Planet X vibe, more in a lighter manner and as a cooperative style game, with almost a little bit of like Connect 4-esque. Well, you'll see why I'm talking about that in a second. $30 is a relatively good price point, but it is going to be a lighter filler game. You need to know that. But what do you need to know about this game? Because what you're doing here, and this is set in the world of Hidden Leaders from BFF Games, you've been accused, your party got a little out of hand, you've been accused of some nefarious crime. You need to find the solution of 5 cards that you're going to be drawing from a deck, and that's going to be a random combination of things, and you're going to be having to deduce it based on the bingo sheet, essentially, that's in front of you by asking one of 2 questions to the person potentially on one side or the other of you. You're choosing those questions, getting the right components via deduction, and then guiding your character through the story, which somehow is going to add more rules and mechanics with abilities and such. But the concept is relatively straightforward. There's a bunch of videos. It runs you through the solution boards of where you're going to be trying to deduce from. The solutions mat, which you're going to be marking off X's and O's on, and that's sort of where, you know, that comes in what I was talking about earlier. And the character ability cards, which is sort of a little bit of a different set of things. Now, the solution cards are the various things that are going to be on those boards in the first place, so that's why they may look familiar there. I mean, it's relatively straightforward. I'll jump over the rules here for a second so you can get an idea of what this looks like. So this is, for example, what your board may look like as you're investigating, right? Because you're doing row, column, row, column. I always do those backwards in the video for some reason when I talk. But the issue being that you're going to slowly mark those off and you're going to try to figure out which 5 cards that, you have and that you only get so many guesses on to try and get it right. The other aspect, the campaign that I just mentioned, including the asymmetric abilities, is that you have 5 different modules that can be added to the game right here. They run through them all, reducing the amount of clues, limiting the types of questions, the asymmetric player abilities, a queen marker, which is going to control the areas, the columns and rows next to her immediately, and then large clues that are going to change sort of the dynamic of the clue as a whole. The scenarios that they run through as well is increasing difficulty if you want to play through, and that's essentially what it is. So for $30, I'm really tempted. This is reminding me a little bit of like 9 Minute Kingdoms, which is still sitting back up there behind me, where I kind of go, this group pledge would be a really great thing, right? Like, spend a group amount of money on this thing, $200, and give them away on the channel, or, pass them around locally for the cost, right? Because I think this is a game where you could really have a lot of fun with. And the stretch goals that they're hitting down here, again, you can see the rules, you can see the previews, there's a whole bunch of that stuff. They've hit 1 stretch goal, which I somehow passed it by, but basically the stretch goal right here is 5th player is added to the base game, so you can play with 5 instead of 4. Which is kind of cool. That's basically the whole gist of things. And so you're either going to be in on it or you're not. And how do you feel about this cooperative social deduction type game that's definitely lighter? If you have the audience and the group for it, great. But this is also one where you're going to need that group dynamic for it. No matter how good of a game it is, if your group doesn't play that games like that, well, it may not be a right fit for you. So check it out if you want. That's Almost Innocent. Next up, we have Dwarves Legendary Forest. Now, Legendary Forest is a little bit deceptive because Legendary Forest is actually an expansion for Dwarves Spring, which is another in their line of Seasons games in a little bit different mechanical approach, all of them being slightly different, tower defense, tiling. This one is engine building with worker placement. Expanding your empire, gathering resources, training your dragons, and fighting away monsters, as well as achieving quests. But the Legendary Forest expansion is actually a combination of 3 different, as he pulls up 4 fingers again, classic Liege there, pulls up 3 fingers for 3 expansions that are all included in this. Now, you can get the new stuff, you can get the old stuff, you can get everything that you want for this line of games from Vesuvius Media. So what you're doing essentially is you're placing your settlements. The settlements are going to allow you to gather the resources. You're going to be doing the various things that I just mentioned in sort of a worker placement-esque vibe. When we pull it up here in terms of the rulebook, you can see that it's got a hex-based system where there are very specific rules for the things that you can place down on the map, including said settlements. How the game actually plays, though, when you scroll down here, start of the new era, you're getting your resources. You have your own individual board that's keeping track of what you've built, the resources you're gathering, and the total amount that you can have in the first place. Now, you can see over on the right side here, you're going to be training dragons, which is another way to gain victory points at the end of the game. The various actions that you're going to be doing, like I mentioned, building the settlements, building fortresses instead, exploring these various tiles, which includes potentially fighting monsters where you're flipping over cards from your hero deck in order to see how many axes those cards have in order to defeat the monster if you draw more axes that are in the corners of said cards in the first place. Gathering the resources up, fairies, which are going to allow you to manipulate things on the board. They're also going to be part of one of the expansions. It also gives you the ability to use asymmetric abilities versus using them on other people. Commanding your dragons, training them, and going on quests. And these are all of the quests right here. So it's not a quest where you have to spend said resources that you're gathering, right? It's just achievements more, if you will. Like this one, have 5 gold, have a level 3 dragon. So that's the gist of the base game. One of the other expansions, Elven Uprising, having another addition here. But this is the interesting thing, is they have content for the spring, the game we're talking about now, as well as one of their previous games with the winter expansion. More asymmetric abilities, as well as upgrading your worker, your dragon, into a dragon king. Now, when we go over here to the Enchanted Forest, one of the other expansions, you can see that again, you're going to have winter, another expansion for that content, as well as the spring, which is giving more asymmetric, unique monster abilities that you're going to be fighting up against, more unique buildings as well. It's not an insignificant price point, and that's probably the biggest thing here. The base game alone is going to cost you $60 with stretch goals, and the expansion itself is also going to cost you $60, which again, like I said, is a multi-tiered, multiple expansions in one. But how do you feel about that? And if you don't own Winter, how do you feel like expansions that are offering you content for a game that you don't have? I mean, that's really more of the question there. 60 and 60 each, 120 for both, no price differential there. They're doing some daily reveals down here, if I remember correctly, miniature based, like you're seeing me scroll by. Here are the reveals, more in the terms of comics, and I think the previous stretch goals were some of the deluxeifications or component upgrades. So that is Dwarves Spring with the Legendary Forest expansion. Check it out if you're interested. Next up, we're going to be talking about this one, which is killing it. Lying Pirates, the race for Pirate Throne, $60,000 almost. And this one's very interesting. 2 to 4 players take that dice rolling, almost liar dice-esque, and you'll know what I'm talking about in a second. And this is one I think has kind of flown under the radar for a lot of people, and you're not probably going to see it too much elsewhere. But $60,000 with almost 750 people, that's relatively impressive. What you're doing in this game is you are going to be blind bluffing in the first phase, action events in the second phase, and then potentially battling in the third phase in order to make your way around this square grid that you can sort of make out in this picture to be the first one that ends up back at the X that you start on. Interested? Intrigued? They're also offering 2 expansions that go along with it. Now, it's a modular event card layout, whereas, so what I mean by that is you have event cards that are placed on each of these squares that are variable each game, and there's going to be good events, bad events, and neutral events. Well, how do you get to those? Well, you have to win the first phase. You have to not lose the first phase, or I guess I should really say, because what you're doing is everybody has their set of dice in their cup to begin with, a certain set of dice with certain numbers and sides on them. This is the betting phase that they talk about right here. You take your dice hidden so nobody knows how many dice you have, roll them face down. And so then you go around and you bid, okay, I think there are 3 3s. I think there are 4 4s. You have to go up in the number of dice, but you can change the face of the die that you're going for. So you can't say, okay, I have 3 3s and then I have 2 4s. No, you have to have more dice. So you can say I have 3 3s and then I have 4 2s or 4 1s or 4 5s, but it has to go up. And then finally someone, says, okay, we're just going to call it. Or someone says, I think you're wrong. Now, the tricky part is the loser doesn't move. The winner and the survivors potentially move along the grid here on the sale phase. But the winner is the one who does the event that's on that section to begin with. Then you have the action phase where you have a hand of cards that are drafted at the very beginning of the game. You have gold cards and silver cards. The gold cards are going to be a one-time more powerful use. The silver cards are going to be slightly less powerful, but you can only play a total of 1 gold and 1 silver each round. So you have to choose when are you going to play it. Potentially, I think you can actually play it in this phase, the sale phase. Maybe I think so. And then you also have the action phase here where you can play cards, but then you also have a battle phase at the end potentially, as well as if you both end up in that X spot, you have a final battle royale between you and the opponent. That's the gist of the game. They're offering 2 expansions here, a map expansion right there, and then more pirates, I think, or more, not pirates, more just event cards overall that are just offering a little bit more take that as well as curses. So it's kind of cool. I'm not sure. I'm really intrigued to see, where this goes and what else they add. The deluxe edition is just deluxe, so take that for what you will. I think it's just kind of cool. I was really impressed by it. I'm probably going to be watching one of these videos after this video is done, and I can see that whether or not I really like it from that aspect of things, or how much take that, or how much just, what does the card play actually look like? Because I understand all the other elements. If I was signed into my own account here, you'd see that I have the remind me actually clicked. But that's Lying Pirates. What's the price point? It's expensive. Right above me is $65. $65 is not inexpensive, and even more for the deluxe edition, about $89. That's probably the biggest issue. If this was half that or 2/3 of that, because especially you're having to add an extra $20 on that for the game, even with the base game. So you're talking $80 for a game like this. Now, the production looks amazing. I love it, but I'm not sure the price point is worth it from the gameplay elements. But again, I guess this would be a really easy game to get played. And yeah, take that for what you will, because you're getting 2 expansions with it. Divisive, but I can see why it's doing well, and it's raised a lot of money even at the little slightly higher price point. So check it out if you're interested. Next up, we have Uluk. I'm going to pronounce that wrong. Uluk, Euro game, hunting, gathering, and really what the emphasis actually is on cooking. You are in a land where there have been no humans, and you are anthropomorphic. I screwed that up on the upcoming one last week. It took me like 6 takes to actually get that word said correctly. Creatures that are hunting, gathering, well, not really hunting, gathering, processing, feeding. And how well you can feed all of your tribe is going to give you various victory points. The type of food you give them is going to give them various victory points. And you are going to be managing these worker placement spots with not only how you harvest, but what you can harvest as well, because the spots themselves actually have a limited amount of harvesting, and as you harvest more, there will be less there in subsequent rounds. There's also going to be things called monuments, if I can find these right here, that the monuments in plastic stands here, where there are worker placement spots where you build monuments, and those monuments will also potentially affect the harvest or the other elements that are going to be strongly, or at least more strongly interactive on a round by round basis. There are 6 phases in this game. There are 6 rounds to the game overall. And depending on how many workers are placed at each location depends on what your resources or your rewards are. There are several different spots, as you can see here, at each worker location. And here's the interesting thing is there's 2 numbers at most of those spots. The person who puts the most workers at that spot gets more. The person who puts less gets less. So it's not just, first one there gets the reward, right? Especially at these multiple processing sites. Then you really have speaking of processing where you are converting those resources into things you can eat, and then you're feeding, because if you don't feed your tribe, for each hunger that you have left over, you're actually losing victory points, 3 victory points, in fact. So that's not insignificant. Last up, you have the changing ecosystem that I mentioned that's going to be affected by the monuments, but also is just going to be affected by what you've done already out on the board. And that's probably the most unique aspect of this worker placement game. Like I said, here are the different monuments that are going to affect the conditions, as well as inventions that you can build along the way to help you better utilize your engine from a worker placement standpoint. Rulebook is there. They've got 2 expansions as well already in combination with the deluxeifications going along with this game. Blessing and Wrath. This may be the one that you may be leaning towards if you're a more Euro worker placement style person. Blessings and Wrath cards, easier or harder to do said actions in the first place. And the Ancestral Spirits here, this is probably going to be one that you may not like if you're of that sort of thinking, where you have secret objectives, but you also have special one-time ability cards that allow you even to interfere with your opponent's actions. So take that for what you will. Price point is actually kind of less than Lying Pirates, right? It's about $46 for the core, and the all-in is only going to cost you about $82. So that's not, again, production-wise, how do you feel about that? Plenty of video here you can check out, but that's the game in a nutshell. The rulebook is very solid. It's a very easy read, especially as a non-worker placement person. So if you're interested in Uluk, check it out. Just when I think I'm out, John Cloudis and Smallbox Games drags me back in for a 4 set of card games, 2 of which are already out, 2 of which are new here. Only an 8-day campaign. This one's already, again, flying under the radar. This is why you come to me, folks. The next 3 games on here are small games that you should have on your radar if you like cards and card style games that are lighter but not without depth. Smallbox Games is really good at doing this. This is the Compass Archive. This has 4 different games, north, south, east, west, that are going to be playing slightly different mechanically with a 54 card deck. If you haven't been familiar with this, go check it out. I'm going to give you the big broad overview here because 4 games, folks, right? So what you're doing here in this game is you have these sequence cards that are going to tell you the sequence, obviously, of how you're going to be playing a turn-by-turn basis in this game. So for example, the north is combo building card games with deck building and multi-use cards. Discard to get additional cards from a player's deck or a zone. Then you have south. South is set collection and hand management. You're going through 3 different decks to build your hands, discarding, locking away to score different abilities or points that are going to be available to you. Then we go down to east here. Combo as well as engine building, playing your cards and getting whether you want to go for the short game or for the long game benefit. Zone by zone area effects that are going to change the point values, and how you're going to be utilizing them is going to be completely different. Last up, you have West. Set collection again with more of a hand management with multiple ways that you can be scoring. Get the facilities, get more unique cards, get more combo building in-game scoring opportunities. Take it from a certain place, get a different effect, and then discard it to do something completely different. No stretch goals. These are complete games. Small Box Games puts out a great product. I'm surprised to see them back on crowdfunding already, but I just did an Empty Throne, earlier in the year. So, John, I'm going to be reaching out to you because this is totally right up my alley. So I love this. Again, Small Box Games does a great product. So it's just whether or not any of these are for you. I didn't even look at the price point. Let's talk about that a second. $9 for the print and play, $60 for all of them. Okay, that's expensive. Not $11 too on top of that. That's a little more than the Empty Throne that I got earlier, which I think was about like 24 or 28 total. Okay, 28 total, 24 total. Well, not for one game. Well, this is 4 games for 60. Okay, never mind. That's actually relatively good. The only question is, do you need all 4? Do you need all 4? Could you just print and play for 9? Yeah, that'd be the only question that I'd have right now. And I don't think you can buy them individually is what it looks like. So take it for what you will. Stuff like this I like talking about, though. Speaking of stuff I like talking about, right? I looked at this and I clicked on this and I was like, I really don't feel like I'm going to cover this one. You know, like one of those silly ones, one of those ones that I'm just like, okay, no, I'm not covering this. And then I read through the page and then I was like, oh, $10,000. Okay, I see why you have $10,000 now. ApeQuest. The search for Joffrey. I'll put this right out there. They need a rule book out there. This is the biggest criticism, and one of the only criticisms I have on this page is there's no rule book, right? This needs a rule book, because if this had a rule book, I would maybe be backing this one right now. That's, how interested I potentially am in this. This 1 to 4 player game, you have time traveling pants that you're going to be utilizing. I know, right? The words that come out of my mouth are totally true. To go through the timeline to fight various enemies, utilizing your allies as well as your sidekicks to defeat them in order to make it to the timeline to rescue your ape friend. And so what you're going to be doing is really just something interesting. You line up these quest cards, these timeline cards. I think it's 11, 14. I can't remember how many it is total, but there's like 45 total in the base game. So it's going to be completely different each time. And then you flip them over as you go, and you have to battle them. And they tell you right here, okay, these are the attacks that's immune to. This is the health that it does down here. And this is the attacks if it hits you. There's text down here that's going to give you a little bit more clue. And this is your player board. So what you're doing on this player board is it tells you how much damage each of these little slots do. And so you take it out when you utilize it and put it all the way down back here at the end on the right. And you have a little monitor over here on the left side that is reduced by whatever the number is up top here. If you go all the way down to 0, then you're out. And if anybody is out before you get to the end of the timeline, you lose. So that's how you're going to be doing that. You have ability cards and ridiculous inventions that are going to be mitigating things along the way. And you have variable asymmetric professors, which is what you are as the character playing the game, that you can choose from in the first place. So they actually say it could be harder, because you may imagine a game like this where you have like 4 people instead of 1 fighting an enemy. It's going to be easier, but no, they've already thought of that, and they're going to make it harder, and they're going to keep it in terms of difficulty. That's everything you need to know. Replacement butlers, not really sidekicks. You're going after the sidekick, but your replacement butlers are the ones that travel along with you. Malfunction cards, item cards, it's $19. And like I said, if there were a rule book out here already, I might be pledging it. So Deluxeifications gets you songs from the artist. and a downloadable something. But anyway, I like talking about this stuff. This is actually, it seems like a really clever game. Just something light, something almost Regicide-esque, if you will, that you should check out. So there you go. Speaking of that one, let's go back to this one as a card game. This one's almost funded too. This one's 70% funded. This is Waking Shards. Very, very quick, very, very straightforward. I really love the art on this. The art is fantastic. Probably the best one all week that I like. What you're doing is you're just drawing 4 cards, discarding one, and then playing each of those 3 cards that are left in your hand to get the strongest army at the end of those 3 potential rounds. Only it's going to be divided up between the character cards and the shard cards. The shard cards are going to be manipulatable cards that are going to give you asymmetric powers. The hero cards, or the the champion cards, are going to be the army values that you're going to be calculating. And so all you're doing is playing a card from your hand and using the shards to potentially manipulate things along the way. That's it. That's the whole game. It's going to cost you, again, about $18, and you can get some stickers and showcase cards if you really want for more money. So I actually am slightly intrigued by this one as well too. Like, if I had an unlimited budget, it would be stuff like this that I would just back across the board, like all 3 of these last games, and just like compare them from that style, because I like this style of game, this 2-player, light, easy to get to the table style of games. And this seems like, if they've got enough core concept here, really something that's just fun. You play until someone wins 3 rounds. That is the gist of the game. Boom. Waking Shards. Again, nailing it this week. There you go. Next up, Weavlings in the Wild. This is a solo puzzle game. Meet murder and mayhem, essentially. It's about 40% funded. I wasn't sure what to make of this, and the rules are a little bit of a tougher read, because they talk about, you've got your weavlings, you've got your trappers, you've got your beasties, which are actually some of the meat that the weavlings want to eat. But if you don't capture them and trap them, then the beasties will eat the weavlings who you're trying to catch, and you have to catch 10 of them to end the game. But if 10 escape, or you take 10 damage, then you lose. Well, how do they escape? Well, essentially what you have is you have this 4x3 grid, and as you're using your trapper to go across this 4x3 grid to activate the various cards as you go along, you are going to be potentially revealing those things that I just mentioned. But at the end of the round, like, things slide down, and when things slide down, they slide out of the play area. So if you don't utilize or go to those areas, they're just gone. And that's how these things can then escape. That's it. Resources, trap cards, weavling cards, and the beast cards, extra beasts here if you want the expansion and more ways to manipulate things with more traps that you can mix in. That's essentially the whole game, with these 2 little expansions on top of things. The rulebook's right here, unfiltered, and Dice Tower both have a preview on this one, so you can check it out. It's relatively straightforward. It goes through some of the spaces down here that you're going to be doing, swapping, moving across, to chaining traps to get multiple actions against the beasts, and then luring the weavlings towards you so that you can avoid them being fed on to lose them. So traveling phase, as I just mentioned, you can kind of see it there. Flip down, flip over. So that's it. What do we got price point wise here? Print and play, $20. $40 for 2 of them. There you go. Weavlings in the Wild. Again, a solo game. If you're really interested in this, the reviews or the hypes quotes on there are very, very positive. So take that for what you will. Check it out if you're interested. Weavlings in the Wild. Next up, Fog, Escape from Paradise, the relaunch, which is already funded. It did not fund the first time. It is now funding the second time. This is a game where you have these islanders that are on the edge of the board. You are going to be utilizing actions after you cover them with your token to get them off of the board as the fog slowly creeps up, a la Lost, and you're trying to get them in the boat. And the more you get in the boat, the more ways you score. And so that's what you're going to be just trying to do. You draft them, as I mentioned, putting your token on them. You move them during like one of the 5 different ways you can move them. And then as the fog advances, the ones that are covered up are lost. If you get the most out, and you're going to get negative and positive depending on how things are scored in the boats, you win. I didn't know there was a solo mode, but there you go. It's going to be about $37 for the standard edition. And if it's like the previous edition, I believe this leader pledge actually was deluxeified, but also with a larger board and even maybe potentially a larger player count. Yep, 5th and 6th player. It's almost like I remember this from last time, because I do. That's everything. It's a relatively, again, straightforward game. They've got some stretch goals here. Most of them just appear to be slight upgrades in terms of the game itself rather than any gameplay content. So there you go. Plenty of video, plenty of conversation out there. Rulebooks on the page. It's funded this time. We've seen that a lot this year. Second time around, and things are doing better. So that's The Fog, Escape from Paradise. Check it out. I love it when the camera goes out in the middle of filming this, right? So you didn't need to see me in that last part. You know, my talking is clearly more than enough. But this one is Guns or Treasure, which is weird because they're like, it's a family game, right? Guns, family game, right? Dichotomy there, especially as someone who has young kids. $31,000 though. It's really doing well. And this one only has 35 minutes to go. So by the time you guys watch this one, I missed this one when it launched. You're going to be maybe able to get late pledging. I thought I'd mention it though, either way. So you have asymmetric captains that you're going to be doing battle with essentially on the high seas. Speaking of that theme, which has really been high on crowdfunding over the last couple weeks. Essentially what you're doing is you're building card-based ships and using them to attack each other either with treasure, guns, or a bomb. If you attack a ship, you count up the number of guns facing each other, and the one with the most guns gets all the treasure. If there's a bomb, both ships are blown up immediately. And you do that until someone wins. And that's it. You're just playing a certain number of cards down here on each ship every single round. It's straightforward. They've added a couple extra captains here with the stretch goals, and that's pretty much everything you need to know. 4 minutes if you want to get a little bit slightly longer version of it than what I just told you, but that's all you need to know. And I'll throw the link in because if they do late pledging, you'll want to go click it. So that is Guns or Treasure. Now, let's hop over to Gamefound. Hopefully with me still in the lower right-hand corner this time. Again, featured. I hate this. This is not featured. You should not have Tainted Grail up here. You should not have Keyforge. You should have all of the things that are live, active. I'm going to mention this one for all you train people over on Gamefound. This is 18 Namibia, halfway funded. This is adding another player to the classic 1895 train game, which was only designed for 3 players. Now you can play it with up to 4 with an extra railway corporation, extra mining corporation, and some minor changes to the map. There you go. I'm not a trainer. I can't speak to the nuances of this game. I'm not going to try and read the rule book. You're going across, trying to make railroad tracks, gathering income, buying shares of corporations, and manipulating it, doing your thing, right? But I'm going to mention it because I know somebody out there will want to hear about it. But that's all I'm going to mention about. So let's go to the next one. Strangely enough, we're talking about Queen Games. Queen Games jumped over to Gamefound, so we'll see if this trend stays true, which actually seems very interesting, but it's a very short campaign. It's almost funded, 96% of the way funded, and we're going to see what this actually does. Now with Queen, you're getting a little extra freebie that they'd say, you know, a Queenie that used to be, but now it's more of an exclusive. They're going carbon neutral, this green planet line that's going to be hopefully more eco-friendly. And this game sort of kind of goes along with that, creating power lines. I'm not really sure green friendly and power lines. Anyway, what you're doing is you're rolling your 6 colored dice on your individual board and utilizing those dice in order to place workers along the different power lines that match the numbers. But the tricky part here is if you've ever played their other one, Luxor, where you have the cards and you have to have your hand of cards where you can only take from either one end or the other. Essentially the same thing here with, here's the Queenie that I mentioned, that you're doing with the workers. So you have, for example, your dice that are here, and then you have the colors of the workers that are going across. And right now in this example, you can see as they're pulling it, you have to go from one end or the other. You have to start with the red, then go to the yellow, or you have to start with the black and then go to the white. And so you have to utilize it that way. Depending on how many worker spots that are empty, then you take a corresponding power token from up here. You're trying to connect these lines to all of the power stations, and when you connect them, you get points for partial connections, and you get more points for having all of the lines connected for, say, this one here with the 7, where 3 lines are going to get you more. And just rinse and repeat, right? Power plants, power, mid-game scoring objectives, because you're playing over, I believe, 15 rounds, and you're doing additional scoring both in the 5th and 10th round as well for other various conditions. You have to be very careful though, because if you end up with different numbers of workers left, they may actually force you to burn a worker. So if you just run out of spaces that had 4 workers utilized on that round, you're going to have to spend either 1 less or 1 more to get the power token. And what happens when you have to spend one or burn one that doesn't fit? Well, then it goes to the what's called the island. And let's see if I can actually find it here. I mean, there's Joker tiles, and we're skipping over that, and kite tiles. The unpaid leave tiles. That's where you put those workers, and for every worker there, you lose a victory point. So that's why it's important. I'm actually mostly intrigued by this one, more so than a lot of the other Queen games, and that's probably because it's also by the designer of Alhambra. So again, I'd like to see some video of this. Reading the rule book, I could see myself going very much either way. And in the past, Queen games hasn't been terribly great in terms of pricing. You're getting one little tile right now, right? That they're saying you might not get. And how many times do you play with the promo tiles? With Queen, well, sometimes more, but with some of the other games, not as much. $40 right now, plus I'm guessing probably $20 to be shipped. We'll see. I'm intrigued. I'm going to watch it until the very end, but that's Powerline from Queen. Now, the one I had on my radar, which unfortunately is not really hitting the mark and actually has a lot higher funding goal than I expected, this is Philosophy. This is a very unique abstract game, and that's the only thing that I can say that, you know, might not be a turn on to people, but having almost $5,000 already is still very, very impressive. It's the problem, though, that their funding goal is $24,000, which is insane for an abstract. I'm sorry, Quality Beast. You know, I'm very interested in this game, and I'm very interested in your upcoming Towers of the Sun later, but this is a lot of money. This is a lot of money that is needed to be raised, and I think it looks beautiful. And it's this combo-based system of arrows that are essentially trying to get a tic-tac-toe style formation of 3 in a row. You have 2 different arrows on these. The targeting icon, which tile it's affecting as it's laid down, and then the impact, which tells you what's actually happening to the other tile. Now, the interesting aspect is you can combo these, because if you get pushed into another spot where there is a target, it's going to chain combo things out of the original 3x3 grid that you are limited to place them in at all times on every single round. And you just go until somebody wins. These are the sets right here of all 12 tiles that you start with that are identical for both teams, and they give you examples of what some of these do. I think this is clever. I think it looks nice. There's enough previews. There's enough video. You know, thematic. You know, again, it's an abstract. I almost wish, you know, nowadays we had more GIF style, right? GIF is just like, you know what? I got a solid game. It's awesome. It's abstract. There's no theme on it. And I kind of wish we could get away with some of that nowadays. You know, Some 8, the one I backed from months ago, they just said, okay, here's an abstract game. And, you know, I didn't try and tie it to anything. You know, the other one I just talked about earlier in the week, Tree Blocks. I mean, that's clever because it ties in the actual 3D component of it. This, I don't know. I feel mixed about it, but I think it's a really solid game, but I don't know how well abstract games do on crowdfunding in general in the first place. $5,000 is great if you're an abstract game, unless you have a $25,000 funding goal. So I feel kind of weird about this one. Abstract games, you know, pure abstract games do not do well at the 3-player count. They're offering 2 different sets of colored tiles that are able to be used as a 3rd-player expansion. But take that for what you will. I'm not sure I know a lot of people that are pure abstracts that want 3 players. So that's, you know, a little bit to me too as well. So what do we get for the price point, though? You know, it's a good price point. $30. I'd pay $30 for that. It's just the disconnect between how many copies of this do you need to get to this. And that's way too many, probably. I think they're going to have a really hard time funding. I think they have a really hard time funding. And I guess I just go, okay, is a lower funding goal in the future achievable? We'll see. Either way, that's Philosophy, Quality Beast. Now, you may be going, Chris, wasn't one of your most hyped games this week Power Core Call of Cthulhu? Yeah, it was. They canceled. They canceled after like a day because they didn't hit their funding goal. They were at $18,000, but it was canceled because it wasn't hitting fast enough and this is the weird thing, you know, and the update here, because I'll look at this. They have to cancel because the current funding rate would miss out on all the amazing stretch goals. They shouldn't be stretch goals then. You should either do unlocks or you should just have them in there to begin with. Just, you know, why not, Board and Dice? Why not? This looks like a great concept. You know, 2-player battling back and forth, taking essentially a smash up style to the power core system that you've created of manipulating it as an action. I think this is really cool. $45 for the regular level, $60 for the deluxe, which has some of the deluxe components here. I believe what you have here is just the upgraded component version. Let's see if I can actually find it. Yeah, you're getting these tiles essentially all upgraded as wooden. So that's the only question, again, is when you're doing deluxeifications, do people actually want the deluxeifications? So then what are you actually doing, and why did I actually like the idea of this? Any two gods, combine them to create a deck, using those power cores to then get the resources, attack your opponent, binding them to create combinations, and just going back and forth in a cool way that's, you know, kind of unique that I think they've done here. Rules, simulator, video from all the biggest people. So where's the disconnect here? I like the fact that all the decks are different. They've got an exclusive deck here that, you know, looks kind of cool. I don't know. Where's the disconnect? Why wasn't this as big of a hit? And I think it's similar to the fact that you've already seen me talk about 2 or 3 of these games that are in that ilk, and you've got a lot of games like this that are established at retail as well already, that you kind of go, okay, well, why am I getting this now? And the deluxeifications are a reason, but apparently it's not enough of a reason. There's an expansion that, or 2, I think, that we're actually going along with it in the beginning. So you're already getting more expansion content, 4 new decks of human factions that you can use to fight, and just kind of cool stuff. I think it looks like a solid thing. But for some reason, it's just disconnected from the people that wanted to get in on it. Because again, $19,000 is nothing to sneeze at, especially with only 300 people. I want to see this one come around again. I'm interested in checking it out either way. I was potentially really looking at backing this one, but we'll see if it comes out again sometime in the future, hopefully from Board and Dice. There you go. That's it. Roundup this week. A lot of under the radar games that I didn't know about launching that were, you know, really solid looking games. So I hope you actually watch this video all the way through, despite me missing, you know, out of the corner for a little bit there. You know what? The camera turns itself off sometimes when there's not the timer thing on. And then, yeah, nah. It is what it is. Whatever. I find it hilarious. You guys probably don't. I'm probably going to get some complaints in the comment section. I'm okay with that. You know what? Like I said earlier in the week, I'm not perfect. I just like talking about stuff and games and stuff. So I don't know. I got the video upcoming for the biggest week of September next week. That video is coming out tomorrow. And, you know, I always wonder, like, should I just retake, like, part of the video from earlier in the week talking about my biggest games of September? Because, like, literally half the games on that list were almost coming from this upcoming week. Although, at the same time, since I've already talked about them and know about them, it'll be a little bit easier to do this time around, right? I don't know. That's all I got. Have a great weekend. I'm off Friday and Monday, so it's going to be a good weekend. 4-day weekend. I just need to get some stuff played. I got, like, 6 games in the past week. 6 or so. 6. I really need to get some stuff played because I need to make some content. But you have to watch that content. Maybe. If you want. Review-ish content. Preview-ish content. I'm trying new stuff. Let me know what you think. That's all I got. I'm rambling now. I got nothing else substantial. Stay classy. See you around.